Every Z fighter has their defining moments in battle, but they also have their lows. Today, we're diving into the best and worst fights for each warrior in Dragon Ball Z. Quick note, I'll be focusing on their major battles, so smaller fights like Goku vs. Yakon won't be included. Starting off the list is Gohan, and much like in my video discussing the best and worst sagas for the Z fighters, I think Gohan's choices are fairly straightforward. For his best fight in Dragon Ball Z, it has to be his battle against Cell. This fight is nothing short of iconic and cathartic, as it captures Gohan overcoming his hesitation and finally unlocking the potential we've seen glimpses of since the Saiyan saga. Watching him rise to the occasion and defeat a main antagonist is the perfect culmination of his character arc up to that point. It's easily his most defining moment in the series. On the other hand, Gohan's worst fight is his battle against Dabura. This fight highlights how much he's struggled due to years of peace and a lack of serious training. While defeating Dabura was important to free Krillin and Piccolo, two people he deeply cares about, it also served as a catalyst for Vegeta's growing frustration. This ultimately led to Dabura noticing Vegeta's anger and Babidi exploiting it to turn him into Majin Vegeta. While the fight has its narrative purposes, it's a low point for Gohan as a warrior, showcasing just how far he's fallen from his prime. Next up is Krillin, and he's an interesting case due to having very few, if any, solo fights in Dragon Ball Z. However, his best fight is undoubtedly against Frieza. Despite being completely outmatched by Frieza's overwhelming power, Krillin shows incredible courage and determination. This fight isn't just about physical strength, it's about his resilience. Krillin holds his ground even when the odds are stacked against him. His battle with Frieza has a lasting impact on the series. His death at Frieza's hands triggers Goku's transformation into a Super Saiyan, which shifts the tide of the battle and ultimately leads to Frieza's defeat. As for his worst fight, Krillin doesn't have many major battles after the Frieza saga, so I'd have to go with his attempt at attacking Perfect Cell. Krillin is one of the reasons Cell achieves his perfect form, and his lack of impact in this saga is evident. When Krillin finally tries to attack Cell, his Destructo Disc is easily brushed off, and Cell swats him away like a fly. It's a frustrating moment, especially considering Krillin's previous contributions to the team. This fight is definitely a low point for his character. Next up is future Trunks, and I think his best fight has to be against Mecha Frieza. This battle serves as Trunks' introduction to the series, immediately establishing him as a force to be reckoned with. Facing off against a villain who was nearly unstoppable just one saga earlier, Trunks exudes unmatched confidence. He unveils his Super Saiyan transformation and delivers one of the most iconic kills in Dragon Ball history. This isn't just Trunks' most memorable moment, it's arguably the coolest and most confident he's ever been. As for his worst fight, despite its significance and how much I enjoyed this fight, I'd have to go with his battle against Perfect Cell. The fight begins with Trunks using his Grade 3 transformation, showcasing immense power, but it quickly becomes clear that Cell isn't taking him seriously. Trunks' inability to land a hit due to his lack of speed undercuts his strength, and the fight ends on a low note, with Trunks essentially giving up and telling Cell to finish him. While it highlights his struggles and growth, it's definitely his lowest moment in terms of impact and confidence. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying so far. Next up is Goku, and choosing his best and worst fights was a bit of a challenge. Goku has been part of some of the most iconic battles in Dragon Ball Z, with his fights against Vegeta, Cell, Kid Buu, and Frieza all standing out as incredible moments. However, I have to go with his fight against Frieza as his best. This battle is masterfully set up throughout the entire saga. Before the fight begins, we learn that Frieza was the one who destroyed planet Vegeta, wiping out nearly all the Saiyans. The tension escalates when Vegeta in his final moments delivers an emotional speech to Goku, reminding him that he's the last full-blooded Saiyan left. This makes the fight deeply personal for Goku. Not only is he fighting for survival, but he's also battling the very person responsible for the near extinction of his race. The fight itself is packed with unforgettable moments, the intense dialogue, the Kaioken Kamehameha clash, Goku's iconic I am speech, and of course, his legendary transformation into a Super Saiyan. This combination of emotional weight, character development, and epic action cements Goku vs. Frieza Frieza as his greatest fight in Dragon Ball Z. As for his worst major fight, this was also a tough decision because Goku rarely has a truly bad battle. However, after some thought, I'd say his fight against Android 19 stands out as his weakest. Despite being warned by future Trunks about the androids, Goku recklessly enters the fight while still suffering from the heart virus. Initially, he seems to have the upper hand, but the virus quickly takes its toll. Goku collapses mid-battle, leaving him completely helpless and forcing Vegeta to step in and save the day. Definitely one of his weakest performances in the series. Next up is Piccolo. For me, his two best fights are against second form Frieza and Android 17. These are the two that immediately come to mind, and interestingly enough, they share some similarities. In both, Piccolo enters as one of the strongest characters at the time, faces off against the antagonist, and eventually loses due to some unforeseen twist, like a transformation or Cell's arrival. However, I'm going with his fight against Android 17 as his best. This fight is one of my favorites in the entire series, and I love how brutal it is. Both Piccolo and Android 17 are at their peak, showcasing incredible speed, strength, and strategy. For most of the battle, neither fighter has a clear advantage, which keeps the tension high throughout. By this point, Piccolo has fused with Kami, completing his transformation into a true Namekian warrior. The animation and choreography are also exceptional, making this fight a standout. As for his worst showing, I'd have to give it to his first encounter with Cell. Despite the significant boost from his fusion with Kami, his fight against Cell is fairly underwhelming. While I understand that Piccolo was trying to gather information and wasn't going all out, he ultimately allows Cell to escape. Even Piccolo himself is critical, acknowledging that he could have easily taken Cell out instead of focusing on questioning him. For me, this is his weakest performance. Next up is Vegeta, and honestly, this was one of the toughest decisions I had to make. The four fights that stand out to me are his battles with Goku, both their first and Majin Vegeta fight, his battle with Frieza, and his beatdown of Android 19. What makes this choice difficult is that each of these fights has its own unique elements that I really enjoyed. His first fight with Goku was a game-changer, cementing Vegeta as a major hurdle Goku had to overcome. Even after everything the Z-Fighters threw at him, Vegeta kept getting back up, showcasing his relentless Saiyan nature. His ruthlessness made this battle so memorable. The Frieza fight, on the other hand, revealed the inner layers of Vegeta's character and the trauma he endured under Frieza's reign. The entire battle felt deeply personal, possibly even more so than Goku's fight with Frieza. Watching Vegeta push himself to his absolute limit only to realize it wasn't enough perfectly captured his anguish. His acceptance of not being the one to defeat Frieza, followed by the heartfelt speech he gives to Goku, really hit home. The somber background score and King Kai's words further emphasized Vegeta's internal struggle. Then there's the Android 19 fight, where Vegeta is at his most confident. Fans of the character love every moment of his trash talk and the sheer brutality of the one-sided fight, culminating in his iconic Big Bang attack. It's a fight that shows Vegeta at his peak, both in power and attitude. Finally, the fight with Goku when Vegeta is under Babidi's control. This one is packed with emotion, as Vegeta is torn between his past and his desire to return to his old self. The animation in this fight is some of the best in the series, and the raw intensity makes it unforgettable. The only downside is that the fight is interrupted by the events of the saga, which detracts from its full impact. While each of these fights is incredible in its own way, I have to go with Majin Vegeta vs. Goku as his best. As for his worst fight, I have to say it's his battle against Perfect Cell. Vegeta's decision to let Cell reach his full power, even at the cost of fighting off his own son, ultimately leads to his downfall. After all the trash talk and his overwhelming confidence, Vegeta is quickly humbled. He realizes he's outmatched, and despite his efforts, the fight turns against him. After unleashing his final flash, Cell mocks him and finishes the fight. It's definitely not one of Vegeta's best showings. His arrogance costed him dearly in this battle. Next is Tien, who actually has very few notable fights in Dragon Ball Z. Interestingly, I'd say his best fight is the one where he dies, his battle against Nappa. It's the one time Tien really feels like a significant factor in the fight. His sacrifice in an attempt to avenge Chaozu is both heroic and heartfelt, making this battle stand out for his character. As for his worst fight, I'd have to go with his encounter against Buu. It felt like Tien was more of a cameo in this battle. He's quickly overwhelmed and defeated, and it doesn't really showcase his abilities or contributions. It's a brief, underwhelming showing for a character who had much more potential. Next up are Goten and Trunks. Their best fight is, ironically, when they go up against each other in the tournament. It's the only time we see them fight without fusing, but it's still a genuinely enjoyable battle. Both of them display impressive skills for their age, and the fight highlights their bond and growth as fighters. As for their worst fight, it would have to be their battle against Gohan and Vegeta. However, that's a bit of a dull conclusion to their worst fights, so I'll include their battles as Gotenks. In this case, I'd say their worst fight is when they face Super Buu after emerging from the hyperbolic time chamber. I've mentioned in previous videos that I'm not a fan of Gotenks due to his immaturity, and most of his fights are contenders for this spot. But I chose this one because after learning that their families and friends have been eaten by Buu, Gotenks continues to act immature and doesn't take the fight seriously. Personally, I found this frustrating, especially considering the stakes, but let me know what you think is their worst fight. And lastly, we have Yamcha. His best fight has to be against the Saibaman, where he gets caught off guard and, well, dies in one of the most memorable and tragic moments in Dragon Ball Z. As for his worst fight, well, I'd say when Dr. Gero steals his energy and almost kills him. Honestly, it's just another example of how Yamcha always seems to get the short end of the stick. So don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other Dragon Ball videos. See you there.